Think about the person living right next door to you. Someone who smiles at you in the grocery store, waves to your kids, and pays their taxes on time, all while concealing a dark trail of unthinkable violence. Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're stepping into the shoes of a behavioral analyst to clinically unpack the chilling mechanisms of how serial offenders manage to evade capture for years. We are looking at the hard data, the forensic blind spots, and the highly unsettling reality of criminal camouflage.
It really forces us to ask a deeply unsettling question. How exactly does a killer manipulate both human psychology and the criminal justice system to remain completely off the radar for decades? As we're going to see, it isn't just about being some elusive mastermind. It is a devastating combination of careful calculation, shifting geography, and the cold exploitation of societal vulnerabilities.
Here is our case briefing. We'll be peeling back the layers of evasion, starting with target selection, the organized offender profile, geographic mobility, systemic blind spots, and finally, the killer's inevitable mistake.
Part 1. Selecting the perfect target and the dynamics of victimology.
Before we can really analyze the behavior, we have to establish the baseline definition of serial homicide. Criminologically speaking, this requires the killing of two or more victims in separate events, divided by what's known as a psychological cooling-off period. And it's this exact pause, this chilling return to normal life, that makes these crimes so uniquely difficult to track.
To put that into perspective, think about standard homicides. Detectives usually have a starting point because they typically involve known relationships, which provides an immediate motive and a clear suspect pool. But serial homicides, they almost exclusively target complete strangers. Just like that, the motive is erased, social connections vanish, and the immediate suspect pool drops to absolute zero. The trail goes cold on day one.
But here's what most people don't realize. These offenders don't choose their victims at random. They intentionally prey on highly vulnerable populations, like sex workers, unhoused individuals, runaways, and the elderly. It's a dark, mathematical choice. Because these marginalized groups are unfortunately far less likely to be reported missing right away, the killer drastically reduces the initial heat and pressure from local police.
Part 2. The organized offender profile in the psychology of camouflage.
Statistically, organized killers buy themselves time through terrifyingly precise methods. They rely heavily on premeditation and maintain strict control over the crime scene. But their most effective tactic for evasion is evidence minimization. They actively transport victims away from the primary scene to secondary, remote locations. By dumping remains in inaccessible areas, they completely destroy the forensic traceability and time of death accuracy that investigators desperately rely on.
And this is where it gets deeply unsettling. Forget the monsters you see in horror movies. During those cooling-off periods, these individuals hide behind the ultimate social camouflage. We're talking about stable desk jobs, smiling family photos, and heavily protected reputations. This mask of normality allows them to blend seamlessly back into society, completely deflecting any suspicion from the people closest to them.
Part 3. Geographic mobility and crossing jurisdictional lines.
For these predators, geography is a literal weapon. Picture a long-haul truck driver, a traveling salesperson, or a migratory worker. A highly mobile offender might commit a crime in one town on day 1, but by month 3, they are 2 states away. Because police databases have historically been so fragmented by region, the overall pattern gets shattered. To a local detective looking at the file, it just appears to be an isolated, tragic, unsolved case.
Part 4. Systemic and investigative gaps. The blind spots in law enforcement. We have to acknowledge a crucial point here. Evasion isn't just about a killer possessing some dark brilliance. It's heavily reliant on massive systemic blind spots. Historically, investigations were obviously crippled by poor technology and zero digital surveillance. But even today, modern systemic failures, like huge data silos across different states, critically underfunded departments in poor interagency communication, create these massive gaps that killers just effortlessly slip right through.
And let's address the forensic elephant in the room. Even with today's state-of-the-art forensic science, DNA is not a magic wand. An isolated DNA profile left at a crime scene is virtually useless to detectives unless there is already a suspect in the database to compare it against. It's basically a lock without a key, leaving investigators waiting in the dark for a match that might never come.
Part 5. The inevitable final mistake and the killer's downfall.
Despite years or even decades of operating in the shadows, long-term evasion rarely lasts forever. A comprehensive study of 671 serial homicide cases proves exactly that. The data shows that these horrific sprees almost never end because of a single masterstroke by a lone detective, but rather through multiple overlapping pathways that finally corner the offender.
You might assume that forensic science is always the hero of the story, but the absolute most common catalyst for capture is actually survivor testimony. The second a victim escapes, the killer's entire methodology is exposed to the light. This is usually followed closely by delayed forensic matches, which can sometimes take decades, and eventually simple human error by the offender, like a random traffic violation or an arrogant confession to the wrong person.
To close these fatal blind spots once and for all, modern criminology is constantly evolving. Law enforcement is now working aggressively to improve interagency data sharing, massively expand DNA databases, and develop incredibly precise geographic profiling tools. More recently, they are weaponizing AI-driven pattern detection to instantly spot those subtle cross-country connections that a human analyst might completely miss. Ultimately, we are left with a profoundly sobering truth from the source material. A killer's longevity relies heavily on the systemic invisibility of the marginalized people they target. Tragically, their ability to evade capture is often a mirror reflecting the deepest cracks in our own justice system.
Which leaves us with a haunting thought. As our technological capabilities rapidly evolve and close these gaps, comment your thoughts on this video. Also, subscribe to us to see more videos like this in the future. See you in the next video.